on this episode of A Tale of Two Hygienists. By traveling, by seeing things outside of you, you become a more well-rounded individual. I think we understand compassion maybe a little bit more. We understand other people a little bit more. It gives us exposure to new foods, new ways of thinking about life. Just kind of everything just kind of opens us up more. And so where this is important is when now we have people in our chair that might be different or come from different experiences than we do. And we need to be open and supportive of them. But I mean, the opposite's true as well. As patients, they have a responsibility to be open and honest and supportive of us as well.
People's faces light up when you've experienced their country and can talk about, what you love about it and, thank them for being in the United States and being away from home. And so it does follow you back home too, not just when you're abroad.
Yeah, this is a tale, oh yeah, a tale of two hygienists. So there might be only one, bringing the best of dental knowledge, and we do it all with ease. We cover oral health and screening, and preventing gum disease. We're gonna do a lot of learning, and have a little bit of fun working at the dentist. A tale of two hygienists.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of A Tale of Two Hygienists podcast, episode number 430. I'm your host, Andrew Johnston, and thank you so much for joining us today. In this episode, it is a good one. I am joined by Brittany Duncan, and we talk about international travel and what it's like to prep for this dental trip. Now, full disclosure, my voice gave out about halfway through there, and so I'm really, really sorry that this sounds all whatever. Still just coming off of a little bit of a sickness. Next week, we have another great episode, though. We're joined by Jessica Woods. We talk a little bit about Carrie's risk, Carrie's assessments, some of the tools and the things that she talks about. So that'll be a really good one. In fact, it was so good, we're going to do a part 2 with her, and that'll be coming out at a later date as well. And then we have some really good episodes also planned for the next several weeks. But I'm going to keep this short because I am packing and getting ready for the Philippines. So we'll talk to you next week.
A tale of two hygienists.
All right, everyone, welcome into the interview portion of the podcast. Really excited today, joined by Brittany Duncan. Brittany, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Hello, everyone.
Okay, so today, here's what, by the way, Brittany and I are both coming over a little bit of a sickness, so we apologize in advance if we sound terrible, if we start coughing everywhere. Hopefully our editing team will take that out, but that's just a little background for clearing our throat all the time. So today we're going to be talking about international travel, and we're wrapping up this kind of 3-episode series. And one of the main reasons I think I really wanted to talk about this topic with you, Brittany, is because I feel like as humans, not just as dental hygienists, you, by the way, are our honorary hygienist for today, by the way. And, it's really important for us to see outside of our little bubble. And I don't know if it's just 'cause I'm getting older, but I see it more and more where people are continuing to run into their little silos and just hang out there and just love it. And that's just, it makes life difficult for everyone else around you. I think by traveling, by seeing things outside of you, you become a more well-rounded individual. I think we understand compassion maybe a little bit more. We understand other people a little bit more. It gives us exposure to new foods, new ways of thinking about life. Just kind of everything just kind of opens us up more. And so where this is important is when now we have people in our chair that might be different or come from different experiences than we do. And we need to be open and supportive of them. But I mean, the opposite's true as well. As patients, they have a responsibility to be open and honest and supportive of us as well. And so it's why I talk about this stuff all the time. It's why I really want everyone to travel internationally. I know it's kind of my little soapbox, and I'm sorry about that, but it's really important to me. So anyways, Brittany, you, my friend, are a very well-traveled person. Do you mind just kind of going over a little bit about your travel experiences? When did you start traveling?
Sure. Yeah, I was able to start traveling at a pretty young age, first within Canada, but I think the first time I was on a flight, I was 2, maybe. So pretty young. I traveled to see my grandmother quite a bit, and then eventually my aunt and uncle in the United States. They are a second family to me and really where my love of travel and access to it came from. Every year they would take a family trip, if not multiple, and I was very fortunate to be included on those family trips. They rarely like to go to the same place twice, which meant that I got to experience a lot at a young age. Primarily when I was younger throughout Europe, we did a few cruises, which were a really cool way to get a taste of a lot of different countries in a relatively short period of time, 10 to 12 days. And then as I got older, those trips got a little bit more adventurous as well as more independent. I was able to study abroad in Chiang Mai, Thailand. That was my longest duration of time out of the United States, which was just under 6 months. I in between high school and college, went to volunteer at an animal sanctuary in Namibia. That was for 2 months. So those trips where I was away for a longer period of time and really living in the country, especially for Chiang Mai, that was, 6 months. You're getting used to grocery shopping in the country, how to get around, we used, rickshaws and songtaos, which is like the taxi system, those kind of things. And then now that I am married, Johnston and I, we take our week-long trip every couple of years that we squeeze in, and some mission trips too. So that's a little bit about what my travel experience has been like. It's all
Pretty
different
extensive.
types. Yeah.
Do you feel like you have a like one that you like? Do you like the long-term ones, the one that you can go in and kind of really sink yourself into it? Or is this, you like to go in, fly in, hit it real hard, have fun, and then fly back out real quick?
Gosh, there's pros and cons to both, and they're so different. I would say how Johnston and I have done it recently. We went to Colombia right when we got married, and then most recently we did a trip to Peru, and both of those we planned the whole thing ourselves. It was just the two of us, and if we did day activities with a tour group, it was like simply that. It was just for the activity of the day, and that kind of travel is kind of bridging that gap where you're still independent and you're doing the research yourself and diving in, but you are in that condensed get to know the city really well in a week.
Do you have a particular like travel site that you use for finding the cool stuff in the cities?
We actually use a lot of TripAdvisor, and it's not a specific like as part of that per se as much as it is just like reading. Johnson and I both, him even more so than I, like love reading reviews and just like really diving into the various travel blogs, and especially once you've honed in on that country that you're going to and then the cities that you're going to, it's okay, what do I need to do while I'm there? What's the main things, but then those places that are off the beaten track. We're big foodies, so of course we have to know like where are the local spots to get authentic food. That's always big on our list. So we look a lot at different places, and I do think that's the best way to travel, is not just taking the top 3 things that you read on the first website, but really like getting deeper into it.
Yeah, no, for sure. Do you? I've felt like more you do a lot of international travel, but I think you also travel a lot here in the United States as well, don't you?
Yeah, we try to. Mm-hmm.
So do you have a preference? Do you like to go? I mean, because you guys have family and stuff in New Orleans or something like that. You have connections in New Orleans. So that's a different culture. That's a different experience in and of itself, right? And
Yeah.
then also Colombia is also a very different experience as well. Do you have a preference on staying stateside or going abroad?
Going abroad is definitely the preference, but that's not as feasible all the time. So I do
Mhm.
think that you can get those weekend, trips in domestically a little bit easier, particularly when we did live on the East Coast. Things are a little bit closer. So we don't have a time limit on it, but we've been doing this goal to hit the high point in every state. Most of them are hikes, but some of them you can just like drive to. And so when we did the East Coast, particularly Southeast, that was pretty easy. We took, I think, 6 days one time and we knocked out a bunch of them, versus now that we're out west, they are definitely further. And then the hikes are a lot more extreme where it's like, oh yeah, that's a 2-day serious hike. So we haven't been doing those as much. But the weekend trips within the United States, I think, are a great way to like continually tap into those skills that you use when you're not able to hop countries every, couple months.
Yeah. One of the things that I really like about you, and also is very frustrating about you, is that you're hyper organized and that you like yourself a spreadsheet. Do you mind talking to listeners about like what prep, like what are you documenting as far as your prep? Like how do you organize your thoughts? What are some ways to make maybe the stress of having so many things to do kind of just in one place and make it a little bit easier?
Yeah, for sure. I do love a spreadsheet,
There
but
you go.
definitely the goal is to have everything in a central location. So most recently, when we went to Peru, I had basically like a Word doc that I would drop everything in chronological order of when it was going to happen on the trip. So essentially, you end up with this big itinerary. If you were using a travel agent, I imagine this is the packet they would give you that says, here are your flight numbers, the time, the confirmation number. Here's the transport company that's going to take you from the airport to the hotel. A note that you prepaid for that. Here's your booking reservation for day one activity, the time frame of that, what you're supposed to bring. Putting all that in one place instead of having it in a bunch of emails. Previous times, I would just have a folder in my email where I'd say, Peru trip, and I just drop everything in there. But when you're at a customs desk or you're trying to check in for the hotel and they're asking you, oh, do you have your confirmation number? And you're trying to scroll through your phone and find the stupid email, that's really stressful. So I found that putting the work in when you are booking these things and you have it right in front of you, just to drop it into a central location, super helpful. It's also really nice for your family, if you have a helicopter family like Johnston and I both do, to be able to send them that pack and say, hey, here's what we're doing, here's where we're going to be. If we go missing, on day 5, that's where we should be. So hopefully that puts your mind at ease.
Oh my gosh.
Those
What
kind of
about
things.
what about finding good deals for whether it's going to be for flights or hotels or is that not necessarily as much the focus as the location? Like you just want to go to the location.
No, good deals are important too because it makes it feasible. I think as we have gotten older and have a little bit more financial security, that's less of a deal. It used to be, when we were traveling in college, that we had like a very limited budget. And if anything went awry, like we were screwed, and so, but now we, do treat ourselves a little bit when we travel. But Airbnbs, especially in other countries, are really great. We've had good experience with those. It also brings you to some really cool historic areas that otherwise it might be really expensive to stay in. If there is a boutique hotel in that area, it's, potentially out of the budget, but you can find a really historic Airbnb to stay in. I will say with those, sometimes like hot water's like hit or miss. And, it's definitely traveling abroad. Sometimes it is like you get what you pay for, and there is a nice luxury of staying in like a true hotel. But we've had really cool experiences that are maybe a little bit more memorable doing the Airbnb route too.
Have you come across in all of your times gadgets or travel hacks, packing tools, things that you just like you couldn't imagine living without now?
This is probably not so much a travel hack as much as something I don't do anymore, but that's traveling with medicines. So depending where you're going to your doctor, calling your doctor and asking for like a travel consult and getting, a prescription of Zofran or maybe like some antibiotics if you did get a stomach bug or something like that. I've had food poisoning while traveling before, and it's not ideal. So having those things are important. Any vaccines that you might need. Every country has different rules about what you do need in order to be able to travel there. So sometimes it's as much as like you might not know that unless you're doing a ton of research yourself, or maybe they don't require it, but it's something that you unless you want like dengue fever, you might want to like think about getting what you need medically. So talking to those like specialists that focus in on that is helpful. Johnson, I know when he travels, because he goes some pretty rural places himself, carries a Garmin GPS, and that's nice peace of mind in terms of like a satellite GPS. We do get travel insurance. Knock on wood, we've never had to use it, but that's some of these like things that aren't super glamorous and like shiny, but that as an adult traveling, I'm like, yeah, it's good to have those contingency plans of things that you might need.
I don't remember. I mean, it was just a couple of years ago. There was this family, and they were based out of Florida, which is why I'm sure it came on my news feed. But they were down in somewhere in the Caribbean, and someone had gotten really sick, and they had to be airlifted out. And they showed us the bill of like what the airlift bill is, and folks, it is in the tens of thousands of dollars for this one little 20-minute flight. Like, it was ridiculous what it was. And then they showed us like their little travel insurance thing that paid for it all. I'm like, see, this is why you get it. I mean, hopefully none of that ever happens to anyone, but I 100% support the travel insurance thing. And it's not that expensive though. I mean, I think every time I come to the Philippines, it's probably like $120 or something like that for like the whole trip. Like, it's just not that expensive if you want like top of the line coverage. So
for sure. Yeah.
I want to know, and I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit with this, but like, I want to know about an embarrassing something, like something that you did, whether it was either culturally or linguistically or just something that you done screwed up when you were traveling. You can come back to that if you want.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm sure I'll think of better ones, but when I went to Thailand to study abroad, I lost all my luggage on the way there, both checked bags, and I stupidly did not pack like anything in my carry-on that would be of use if you could not get your luggage for 5 days, which is what happened to me. And it was very warm, like very, very hot. And I had traveled in like pants and like a sweater or something stupid, because airplanes and like the airports are always cold. But it was a little bit of a rough start in terms of not only trying to communicate where my bags are. That's a big one. When I do travel internationally now, I always take photos of my luggage and what it looks like, because there was a really big language barrier there, and trying to explain that like it was a duffel bag, but it was orange, and I'm pointing at pictures. And thankfully I had taken a photo with my parents at the airport, just standing and smiling, but my luggage was next to me. And so I could point at that photo, and I truly believe that's why I got the bag, because I don't even know if there was like an understanding that I was missing the bag before that. But it still took 5 days to arrive. So definitely when they say keep your medications and important things, as well as like some changes of clothes in your carry-on, that's a pretty big one.
Did you try and go shopping? Like try and find clothes that fit you while you were there?
At the beginning I did. I was able to get like a couple pairs of pants, but the size difference between like
that's what I
little
want to dive into.
Thai women, it was, and myself was like pretty different. And then fortunately some of the girls that were in my program that like I didn't even know at the time were super nice, and were like, oh, here's some extra pairs of socks, and here's like an extra pair of shorts, and
here's a left boot.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So I'll give you a right shoe, and you have to wear that.
Yeah.
Well, it's fascinating though. I don't think that gets talked about nearly enough, where we're living in this really glamorous world, especially in the United States, where we can get anything in just about any size, and things are really kind of tailored to American sizes, right? We went to Hong Kong, Allison and I did, several years ago, and the sweet joy on her face when she could find something that fit her for her size was remarkable. And then when Molly, Allison and I went to Hong Kong again just a couple weeks ago, and they went shopping for Molly, and Molly found clothes that fit her little, frame, and it was and it was perfect, and they looked beautiful, and you come to the Philippines, and it's like, well, I can't find a shoe to save my life. Like there's no size 11.5, flip-flops over here. There are. They're harder to find, but out in the middle of nowhere, there's not going to be any. And so it's something that to really think about. It's like, if you're traveling abroad, like it might not be what you can get back home. Don't just assume that you can get stuff.
No, especially like, you'd think like a hiking boot or like a good quality running shoe or like those kind of things. Like if you're doing a trek and you forget your hiking boots, good luck.
Yeah.
Judson just went on a climbing trip in Ecuador and he had forgot his leashes for his skis didn't end up working. And the ones that we had bought right before he left. And this is at the base of Mount Chimborazo, where people travel to go, ski mountaineer this mountain. You would think that that's a thing that's sold, and it's not.
Yeah.
Like, you bring what you need.
Wow. Yeah, the assumptions that we make sometimes are just so interesting.
Yeah.
What is your favorite country, though, to travel to that you've been to?
Tanzania.
Really? Why? Why for?
Wildlife and just completely different, really magical. I mean, I've been to Namibia and I've been to Tanzania in terms of Africa, and both were amazing. The people, the culture, just the untouchedness of it all. Seeing the Maasai in their robes and how like untouched that culture still is, and how when you see the wildlife and you're like, I am in the postcard, and it's really rural everything. It's not like, oh, okay, yeah, there's a line, but then out of the photo frame is a big building or trash or things like that. It's just still a pretty untouched place, probably because of the cost to do that kind of trip is unreal, but it's something that at any point in life, if you had the ability to do it, I would, and making that the ultimate travel goal, if it's of all interest, is totally worth it. I would say that if I didn't meet Johnston, I think I'd probably be living on an animal sanctuary somewhere over there, like with 2 cents to my name, but happy as a clam.
Well, way to go, Johnston. Way to pull her out of that poverty and beautiful awesomeness. Neat. Let's talk about safety. Let's talk about safety while traveling. Have you ever had any close calls or any issues traveling?
Thankfully, we have not had close calls. When we went to Colombia, Bogota in particular was probably the most unsafe I've ever felt in terms of when you travel, there's usually the feeling of being looked at just because you're different. It's, you're a tourist there. It's of interest, it's just culturally, it's a lot of times like exciting and a positive thing to see people that look different from you and speak different from you in your country. In Bogota, it felt like a little more like we were being like watched, like, not really smiling.
Cartel was watching you?
Maybe, yeah.
Like the scouts, the lookouts?
Exactly. And that was one of the places that we were staying in Airbnb. So it is kind of like if you went missing, like, who really knows? It's not like the hotel would be like, oh, they haven't checked in or out in a day or two or that kind of thing. And that trip changed a little bit how we pack and dress when we travel. We do tend to wear a lot more neutral colors now. We try to blend in as much as, we can, traveling now where it's, we're not wearing bright clothing, and we try to draw less attention to ourselves. And obviously jewelry, I don't travel wearing any jewelry. If I do, it's like I'll pick up some kind of like ring from a street vendor there that's like a wooden ring or a spoon ring or something random that's just kind of cool for the trip. It's usually what I, one of the first things when I'm there is like, oh, I like to, find a non-flashy, wedding ring to wear. But other than that, I don't travel with any jewelry, and we try to just blend in and be as least obnoxious as possible as a tourist. That's a big one, where we try to blend in. I've seen some cringe, moments where you're like, who's giving us a bad name? Stop.
They had a show a long time ago. It was called Locked Up Abroad. I don't know if you ever watched it, but they always did these recreations, right? They're not actually going to show like what really happened. And the thing that like still to this day sticks out in my head is the recreation of their obnoxious behavior before they got robbed or before they did something stupid and I don't know, got themselves into trouble. And I was like, see, this is why, like, you guys just stop being this way. You guys wouldn't be in jail right now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for younger, listeners, like when we studied abroad, they were very clear with us about how you conduct yourselves in terms of your drinking or, drug use, that kind of thing. Thailand's a very strict country about that. And they're like, they will throw you into Thai prison and make an example of you, and there's nothing we can do about it. So be very careful. And knowing the laws or cultural feelings about where you're traveling, obviously for more conservative countries, how you dress, your PDA, those kind of things, to be respectful and not bring any of that like unwelcome attention, either legally or from people that, take the law into their own hands abroad. You just don't want to attempt that.
It's interesting how this isn't like a U.S. thing, but I feel like the U.S. is a good example of it. How we just don't think about the things that we have that we take for granted, right? Marijuana is legalized in many, many states. And I think the feeling anymore, I mean, you go back 20 years ago, marijuana was like the devil, right? Like, it's, oh my gosh, we can't have marijuana. But then now it's like, oh, it's kind of like normalized. Well, guess what? In other parts of the world, just because that's the way it is where you are, doesn't mean that's the way it is everywhere else. And
Right.
so it could still be, have a different feeling. Like, it's hard to know the laws in every country you're going to go into, but like, I would suggest just doing a quick little Google search of like, some customary tips to abide by.
For sure.
So I want to kind of get into, we have a dental trip coming up, and by the time this airs, it's going to air on Wednesday. So we're going to be like leaving for this, and I'm really excited for it. And listeners, like anyone that's out there, like 2025 is going to be a great year. If you guys want to go on a trip with us, do it. But if you want to go on any other, there's a lot of really good organizations out there. If you email me, andrew@tele2igenesis.com, I will connect you with anyone that I know that's doing really cool stuff. If you have like Africa, like you want to go to Africa because Brittany's like convinced you that that's the best place to go now, we got connections, right?
Yeah.
So just let us know. But also if you want to do something local, let us know too. So we have lots of connections, for Missions of Mercy and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But any questions that you have for me about this little dental trip?
Oh my gosh, so many. I am so excited for you. I'm sure for anyone that's been listening to the podcast since its inception, you've heard Andrew talk about this like dream of setting up a mission trip to the Philippines, but certainly for as long as like I've personally known you, it was like a dream, and then it was, like this idea that really got legs, and now to see it happening is so super cool. So I guess, what made you like take the jump to really do it this year?
Honestly, I think it's just the simplicity. I think anyone that's out there like trying to like organize something, they understand it's like herding cats, right? It's so hard to, all the logistical things that you have to put together. And I'm also one of those people that I like a partner in things. I like to have, just someone that I can either bounce ideas off of, or someone that has an expertise in an area that I'm not very good at, or who will listen to my side of it and kind of like, kind of tweak things. And I came across last year when we came to the Philippines, I came across a tour company, these people over at Kiluma. And when I reached out and said, hey, like, I want you guys to handle all the fun stuff. We'll handle all the dental stuff. Can we partner? And they said, absolutely. In fact, I was rereading the email this morning, and they said, 200% yes, we want to do this. I'm like, okay, great. And so, it just, right place, right time, obviously, but, having good partners, I think, and good support system, made it happen. So.
Yeah, for sure. Were there anyone that you hadn't talked to before or met that signed up for the trip that you like, that kind of like came out of the woodwork?
Yeah, I mean, it was surprising. I'll be honest, like with the whole like, I'll tell you guys the good, bad, ugly. It's we had so much interest initially. I had over 50 people for 2024. I'm like, we're going. But then when time came to like, okay, we're gonna have to like put your money where your mouth is. It wasn't that much. It's $1,500 plus your flight. It was not all
Deposit, yeah.
expensive. And people just weren't ready to commit. And I was kind of surprised by that. I was a little bit more surprised than I thought I would be. And so the people that are ended up being on the list, a majority of them I actually do know, but we have several of them that I haven't met yet. And one's actually from Australia.
Oh, fun.
And so her flight's gonna be a lot easier than the rest of our flight, I would say. It's only 8
Yeah.
hours from Sydney as opposed to, across the world. So
Yeah, and that time change and jet lag will be a little less severe.
oh yeah. And I was just and even then, like the people that I knew, I didn't expect some of the people to go. Like Dr. Pam's gonna go.
So fun.
Like Dr. Pam, like really? You want to? And she's gonna bring her husband, which is gonna be, a great time. And we have 3 doctors going. I was hoping I'd have at least one. I knew the IJITs were going to come out. We have 3 that are coming. So I'm just really excited about, the people that are going to come. But 2025, that list, that people that didn't come for 2024 end up getting bumped down. 2025 is now like 75 people on that list and only 20 spots. So it's going to be an interesting 2025. I might have to open up a second trip if I can find out how to have the time off to do 2 trips a year.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I know Johnston and I are probably going to have to like throw some elbows to get back on the list since we couldn't make this year's one, but
you guys are always invited. I will always save a spot for whenever you guys want to come. But, yeah,
like mainly Johnston, but
I know. And this one would be different than what we did in the Philippines before, and so it's going to be a great time.
Yeah, that's awesome. What do you plan the care to be like, or are you going to kind of like see what happens as you go, like what the patients need, or do you have like a set plan of like, this is what we're going to offer, this is what we're not?
I was on a conference call just before we got on this call, and I was talking with some people about prevention, being more proactive in our role as prevention specialists.
Yeah.
Sorry, folks, my voice is starting to really go now. But trying to never have to use a drill. And I was really happy because that's kind of the same model that we're going to use for this trip. Is like, we're not going to ever bring a drill in these trips. We are going to bring some spoon excavators. We're going to do some very light removal of gross decay, just so that we can get down to where we need to, so we can put the silver diamine fluoride on. But primarily this is going to be an SDF, silver diamine fluoride, prevention, arresting decay, and then using glass ionomer. So we're going to be using glass ionomer for sealants. We're using glass ionomer for, hopefully not too deep of excavated cavities as well. But then also a lot of this is, we have an untouched population, and we have an opportunity here to do a lot of research and get some really good baseline studies. And what I would imagine this goes into later on is probably more like nutritional counseling and things like that as well, kind of bringing that in, and then maybe expanding up to the educators there at the schools, maybe getting some brushing programs and stuff going on in the schools. So yeah. So we'll see. I mean, this is going to be super basic right now. It's hard to know because this is my first time, not my first mission trip ever, but it's my first time like doing one, organizing it, and in a place that doesn't really have a lot of good facilities to do stuff in. Yeah. So we'll just kind of see what our obstacles are when we get there, and hopefully we can do our best.
Yeah. Do you know if the places that you're going, like, will this be one of the first times that like mission group care has been offered to them? Because that's always interesting too.
Yeah, they don't have. Yeah, so to get to this island, you have to take a boat, and so there's no groups that go to this one, and this is just one of, I would say, 6 or 8 kind of in that surrounding area that are decent sized islands that anyone, like you're coin tossing, like which one do you go to? And so we just happened to pick this one just because the guides of the boat that I was on with my sons are from this village or from this town. And so we did like a little town tour, and I was like, it's a really cute little town, and we love the guides. The guides are really, really good people. So we're like, oh, let's go see if we can support them. So
yeah, absolutely. And to know firsthand from locals that this is where some care is needed. Johnston and I go on this medical trip to the DR. I've been once, but Johnston's been several years, and they like to go to the same places annually, like the same. We usually have 3 stops that we like to go to, and they like to go annually to have that like continuation of care.
Yeah.
But it is, they used to go to Nicaragua for like 25 years or something, and then with the political climate there, they couldn't go anymore, and that's when it switched to the DR, and it's been it took them a while to figure out where the need for care really was versus like, oh, this is where you should go.
Yeah.
Sometimes it was like a nicer kind of resorty area where it's like, oh yeah, go on the mission trip, but kind of that line between like luxury versus like where is the real need to care. And sometimes those do
Right.
align where it's like, okay, yeah, it's beautiful, but then behind the scenes, there's people that are really struggling. And then other times it's like, no, you got to get off the beaten path. But that's boat access only is pretty out there. That's exciting.
I would love to say like this is going to be like roughing it, but it's also going to be, snorkeling and island hopping on either side of doing this. I mean, we are staying in like little bamboo huts and mosquito nets, and no air conditioning and stuff like that when we're on the islands. But so it's not like it's roughing it, but it's also not lap of luxury.
Yeah.
But it's probably like the best mix I think that I could ever experience. Then the DR when we go with Somos Amigos, it's a similar thing to what you're talking about. Like we go to it's the same place over and over again. The community members are super involved in like the planning of like, when are we doing the missions? What kind of services are we offering? And you stay in people's homes, and you take the bucket showers in their showers, and you do your best and freeze in the bucket showers, and are just a good time. I mean, I like those types of trips.
Yeah, me too. And oh my gosh, for those of you, well, you'll probably already be on your way and not listening to this episode, but they are in for a treat when it comes to the food. I am super jealous of, oh my gosh, all the Filipino food.
But this is going to be this. Then this is why you and Johnston need to come back. This will be a whole different experience too, because on the boat, I mean, you can't escape the Filipino food. Like that's all you do is get to eat Filipino food, and it's a huge old spread, and they change it out with all the different fruits and vegetables and all the different dishes, like all the national dishes that they love, were represented very well. And there's, something for everybody. There's lots of veggie, focused dishes. And then there's also like pork dishes, chicken dishes, fish dishes, lots and lots of fruit though. They have a watermelon here that's kind of more of a golden color or a yellow color that is really delicious. And that's usually on the menu for just about every single day. It's gonna be a great time.
Yeah, absolutely. For how much we love fruit in the United States, our fruit does not touch the fruit of like any other country I've been to.
Yeah.
Like every time I travel, I'm like, oh my gosh, like mango is 1,000 times better than any mango I've ever had. Or, in Thailand, like a banana is so much better, or pineapple.
Costa Rica
all
was
the
my
things.
pineapple place. I mean, you have these places in your head. You're like, this is and a lot of it's because it's tree ripened, right? It's not put in cold storage and picked before it's ripe. It's cut down, within a couple of days, and someone's eating it, and it's a whole different way of processing, their fruit. I'm with you. I love it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's gonna be so fun. Ugh. All the photos.
We're running out of time, but I do want to tell you one just quick little like mishap that I did on this trip.
Yes.
That I think no one's going to listen. Like some of the people are going on this trip aren't going to listen to this episode because they're going to be probably traveling, so it'll be fine.
Oh, it's like that. Okay.
Well, I just don't want people to worry. But so one of the biggest mistakes I made was I had a travel agent. Actually, I've had multiple travel agents because it didn't go off very well. And their job was simple. It's like, look, we have hotels, we have a couple of flights, we have some flights in country that I wanted them to do. And so, time goes on. Just I kind of assume things are going, and I check in to see how our flight status was. So I was like, a little nervous. I'm like, I should probably be reporting back on this flight status. And no answer. I'm like, okay. Well, let me go on the airlines who insert like my name or whatever. Finally got an answer. They'd plumb forgot.
Oh,
I'm like, well, our trip is in like a week and a half or whatever. It was 2 weeks.
this was not that long ago. Okay.
No, this is recent. And so I went online to the airline that I know that flies in and out of El Nido, and they were sold out of flights. Nothing coming back from El Nido to Manila for like days on either side of when we were supposed to go.
Gosh, your heart was like dropped out.
Contacted another travel agency and I said, hey, what can we do here? And they're like, well, we could route you here, do this. I'm like, why? We could. Their best solution was to take a bus 5 hours south and fly out of a different airport. And I'm just like, that's not the solution that we need, because we need to leave. Some people need to leave at like 2:00 in the afternoon on Saturday, blah, blah, blah. And it ended up being just a complete nightmare. Like they couldn't figure out a solution. I ended up figuring out a solution my own self, unfortunately. It's just a lot of like time and effort, like searching. And we have one extra little flight that we're going to have to take, which is going to kind of, I don't know, it's fine. But I will tell you, I don't know what I was expecting with a travel agent, but I just kind of thought it was going to be a little bit easier using a travel agent. And I would say anyone that's trying to like plan something, you just got to be on top of them. You can't just assume that people are, and I think probably this was just like they didn't make that much money on this kind of a transaction. And so it was like lower on their priority list. And so, anyway, it was almost we almost didn't go. Like it was almost the whole, I don't know what I would have done. There's no other, if there's no flights leaving, what am I going to do?
I mean, I don't know. Like you get stuck on an island. It doesn't sound terrible, but
we'll have connecting flights going home that day. Though.
Yeah, explaining it to their jobs and employers probably would have been terrible. But no, I've heard that and have had that experience recently. It's really, I think there's a misconception of how travel agents work. Like my assumption was always, if you're paying someone to help you with your trip, like it's going to be pretty turnkey, taken care of. And our family just has grown now between my three brothers, and all of them have kids now, and just our extended family. We were trying to get the trip together, and my mom was like, maybe it'd be easier to hire someone to like help us with this. And she had the same experience where she was like, I'm basically doing all the work, keeping on top of you as I'm like paying you for. So it didn't make sense. But yeah, I second that like you need to really vet the person and, be clear about like what the expectation is of how involved they expect you to be on your end, or vice versa.
I think you'd be proud of me with my spreadsheet that has all of the different colors and the times and all the different things. I literally screenshot that and said, this is what I want you to do. Here's all their birth dates. Here's their names. Here's like literally everything.
Yeah.
All they had to do is like, because, us, regular folks, we don't have access to book more than like 9 people on a flight or something like that. Like we had to do multiple transactions for that where they could. And that's what I needed them for, is because I'm like, okay, we have a group of 13 going. Like we need, but anyway. All's well that ends well. I mean, hopefully we haven't gone on a trip yet, but I'm assuming everything's going to be all right.
Oh,
it
it's
almost
gonna be
always
super.
is.
We're going to do a little recap episode. Is that on the agenda?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I brought my mic with me, and so we'll see if we can do some stuff on the island. I don't know how it's going to work. I'm not going to bring all like the whole kit. No, so we're going to have just the one mic, and we'll see if we can do a couple like live and in person with there, and then maybe some recap stuff. So
nice. You got to find, since I know you're not a huge social media guy, you got to find someone to do an ATOF takeover and get the content that we'll all want to see on Instagram and Facebook about what y'all are up to.
Lori's going, our person that works social media with us. So her job is to make sure that we get the actual good stuff that we need. So,
well, thank you in advance, Lori.
And then also Dr. Pam, she's big on social media.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and if y'all don't follow her, Dr. Pam, she's super cool.
She'll post all the stuff for us.
Yeah.
So, oh my gosh. All right. Well, thanks for doing this with me. I hope listeners, I hope you got some really good information about, some travel hacks. Again, I know this is more of like, just kind of our experiences with traveling, but I think you probably can feel it that, Brittany and I, like, we love the places that we visit. We really try and get into the culture. We really try and learn things from them. And I think we both feel that it really has made us much better people, much more understanding and just like really trying to like get to the root of what people mean as opposed to just assuming. So
Yeah. Last thing I'll say about that is that it's amazing how those connections and little bits that you pick up when you're traveling do stay with you in the United States. Like the more that, Johnston and I travel all the time, we'll be checking in at a hotel or at ski resorts a lot of time on name tags underneath it'll say where people are from, and it's so cool to be able to say like, oh, where in Ecuador are you from, and be able to say, oh, I've been to here, and have that connection, and people's faces like light up when you've experienced their country and can talk about what you love about it, and thank them for being in the United States and being away from home. And so it does follow you back home too, not just when you're abroad.
Oh, I love it 100% agree. If anyone want to reach out to you and ask you more questions about travel hacks,
Yeah.
I guess you're an expert now on that. So
Yeah, absolutely. My email is Brittany, Brittany, Lee, Duncan @gmail.com. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. I do try and keep a list on my phone of like really great restaurants or sites that we saw in each place we visited, so that if anyone's like, hey, we're going to Cartagena, Colombia, what did you see that when you were there that we should check out, that I just have a easy little list that I can copy and paste. So if you ever want to pick my brain, if it's somewhere I've been, I'd be happy to share that.
do you want people to check out your podcast too?
Sure. Yeah. It's called Untraditionally Traditional, a Millennial Homemaker. So if you are looking for some inspiration in the home, cooking, cleaning, that kind of thing, I would love for you to take a listen. And you can find that on all of the major podcasting apps. And I have an Instagram page under that same handle as well.
Awesome. Thanks for doing this, Britt.
Yeah. Thank you, Andrew. Have the best time.
I will.
Yeah, this is a tale, oh yeah, a tale of two hygienists. So there might be only one, bringing the best of dental knowledge, and we do it all with ease. We cover oral health and screening, and preventing gum disease. We're gonna do a lot of learning, and have a little bit of fun working at the dentist. A tale of two hygienists.